I start hanging out with 4 guys who run all the time. That's just what they do. They're runners, right? Guess what I'm going to start doing? I'm probably going to start running.
Absolutely.
If I hang out with 5 guys that just want to drink beer and watch football, guess what I'm going to be doing? Drinking beer and watching football on Sunday. For me, at least, I want to surround myself with guys who, cherish their families, want to be good fathers. That's a big one for me, is the father thing. And also want growth. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the TPM Show. And today we are greeted once again with Coach Chris. Chris and I were talking offline, and today we have a really interesting episode for you. So stick around to the end because there's going to be some action points for you. Chris, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, well, I love the conversation we were having over coffee earlier, and I thought we could maybe talk about it in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were bringing up the idea, which I really liked, about where we choose to invest our resources, our time, and our money. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on conversation with guys all over the place, and a lot of time it's the idea of investing in itself is new, and sometimes just putting any money out to that personal growth is really hard for guys to bite off. And what I recognize, and I realize that most of them probably have some really nice golf clubs. They probably have some pretty nice TVs on their walls, right? And so it goes to show, where are we putting our resources, our time, our energy, our money, and what's the return in that, right? And to me, it was a really good kind of eye opener. Like, what am I doing? What am I sitting on that I'm putting all this time and energy into? And yeah, those hobbies are great and they're important, right, to fill our cups. But at the same time, if my wife leaves versus my golf clubs, what's going to affect me more?
I was just talking to a guy the other day who's a friend, and he just bought his kids new electric scooters, right? And so not super expensive, but a healthy investment. I think they're $200-$300 each. And so those add up quickly. And that's just one example. And those are easy, justifiable purchases to go through. And at the same time, he was complaining about his wife wanting to go to a retreat. And I sat down, I go, dude, you're going to get a 10x ROI on her happiness coming back from a retreat than you are on any material things you're going to end up buying.
Yeah, I mean, that's anytime I've done anything like that, or even had time to go out and just work on myself, or as simple as taking a trip by yourself and just kind of doing a reboot, like that time and energy you invest in yourself, you just show up better, right? And so I don't know. I think there's a lot to it. I think it's just so easy to distract ourselves, with other things and really focus on working on ourselves.
Well, it is, and you got to remember, I mean, I bought a new big screen TV for my house, and the first, 2 to 3 weeks, everybody in the house is excited, right? They want to be in the new shiny TV and everything. And then afterwards, it just dies off. Whereas personal growth or development, whether it be investing in yourself for business or, like you said, taking a sabbatical or a little time to yourself, when you're investing in yourself, no one can ever take that away from you. And I think people forget about that. They're looking for the easy dopamine hit of like, this makes me feel good. I'm going to buy the ATV, the motorcycle, the golf clubs, or whatever else it might be, not realizing that they're probably running from some kind of internal thing that they're not fixing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Anything we buy materialistic is only going to have that short-term happiness. But anytime we do that work on ourselves, it's a forever gift.
It is, and it stacks on itself. And eventually you're going to clean out the junk and what have you. And how often are you using that ATV or the dirt bike or what, the first year, like I said, you're probably using it often.
Yeah.
And then after that, it starts collecting dust. Exercise equipment is a classic example people make fun of, right?
Yeah. Or my boat. That's another great one. Right, yeah.
Boats are notorious.
Yeah.
And so is exercise equipment. I mean, people buy it hoping that the equipment that they bought is going to do the work for them. And it doesn't happen. And then we see this. I mean, you and I have invested significant amounts of money and time in developing ourselves time and time again. And what I would encourage the guys to do it is, first and foremost, do it for yourself. But if the impetus is to save your marriage, or the impetus is to advance your career and your job, or whatever that is that you're doing it for, just do it and take that leap and take that step to really do it, because it compounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also, I mean, it kind of falls in line of sometimes as guys, we were kind of conditioned to just handle it ourselves. And so we never, the idea of going to get help on a personal level, even sometimes on a business level. The business I ran in the past, there's a sense of pride you got to put aside to go say, hey, maybe I don't know this as well as I do.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I mean, most of the guys I know, probably not you, Chris, but have a story of like, I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps.
Yep.
I'll outwork it.
Yep.
I'll out hustle it. And it's so funny because I get the same response whenever I bring this up. And I brought this up at one of our Alpha Resets, which is, there's one happening next door right now, which is one of our transformational events. You've been through it. And I had 10 guys at the event. And I said, how many of you guys have this story that you can out hustle or outwork the next guy? All the hands go up. I go, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Right? Because there has to be one guy that can outwork the other people.
Yep.
You can't have 10 guys outworking each other. But it goes back to this whole idea of investing in yourselves. And so this hit me in my marriage where I realized that my wife, when she married me, she married the possibility of me, right? Of who she saw me becoming. And when I invested in myself, my wife saw that she didn't see it this way. This is my analogy, of course, as the stock rising in her investment, so to speak. And that's the way I look at it. Like if I'm investing in Nvidia, Tesla, or any stock that's Coca-Cola, I want to invest in a stock that's I think is going to rise. It's going to grow. And so as humans, as men, how do we grow? Well, we have our physical fitness. We can grow there. But we also have our emotional, mental, spiritual awareness that we can increase. And if you're not working on it, you're going to be degrading, right? Because if you're not growing, you're dying. Like you're degrading yourself. So for a lot of the guys that you probably are talking to, they're in a situation where their partners, they're going, hey, I knew who he could have been, but I'm just seeing him degrading. He's sitting on the couch, drinking beer at night. He's not doing anything with the kids. We're arguing all the time. Or what happens for a lot of guys, happened to me, is I ended up with a roommate with a ring, right? And not the cool one that throws you a beer while you're watching Sports Center with and says, hey, what's up when you come home? It's one that doesn't want you in the house.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you get comfortable, and that's where we think we have to do all these things to get the job, get the career, get the house, get the wife, and then now we can just cruise control. And we can't, because that expectation they had and what they saw in us, that doesn't stop. We cannot, if you're in a long-term relationship, if you have to continue to grow and change and be the better version, because that's what they're expecting to see of you.
100%. And I look at this now at this stage of my development as such an amazing opportunity, because I get the chance to grow. Somebody else can see in me my potential that maybe I can't see in myself.
Yeah.
You can't see your own blind spots, as we all know. And they can see, hey, this is a tweak you need to make. Now, unfortunately, the way most people go about explaining this to us is the worst way possible, right? Our partners are the ones that can trigger us or upset us more than anybody.
Yeah.
It's like having siblings. They know exactly which buttons to push. I know my brothers, if I want to piss them off, I know exactly what to say, what to do that will set them off every time. My wife does too, consciously or subconsciously.
Yep. Yeah, I had a call just recently, and the guy, multiple times in the conversation, his wife's pushing him to get a better job, pushing him to get a better job. And I hear that often, but there's so much, he doesn't quite understand, I think, what she's asking for. It's not always about the money. She just wants to see him grow and do what she saw him, right, originally. Yeah,
it's my experience is when the partner asks the guy to get a different job or change the job, it's almost never about the money. It's really interesting. The guy translates it into it all being about the money.
Of course. Yeah.
But when I've talked to the wives are like, no, I don't care. Like when we're good, I'd sleep in a tent with this guy, right? When we're bad, I don't even want to be near him, regardless of how much money he has. It's about how he feels and how he shows up. And so many guys out there are bitching and complaining about their jobs and what they do. And you think about it, like, how many hours a week are you at your job? 30, 40? If you're an owner, 60, 80, or you never turn off as a business owner as well, or as a manager, if you would. And so if you're going to spend that much time doing something, why aren't you investing in doing something you actually enjoy? And not everybody has that opportunity. And I get that, right? I really do. But then do something outside of your job that's going to allow you to have fulfillment and growth.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be a lot of different things, right?
For sure.
So many things.
Yeah. I think the guys need to figure out what that is for them, though. If you're struggling in your marriage, fix that. If you're struggling with your kids, fix that. Like if you're struggling with your internal battles and struggles, like we all do, work on that and surround yourself with other like-minded men who are on that journey. Because unfortunately, we all have heard this thing: you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But do an audit. Like, do an audit of the people you're surrounding yourself with, the language they're using. And if you take a step back, and I did this several times in my life, Chris, take a step back and I just almost from a third person perspective, like I wasn't in the party. And I remember doing this at a barbecue. And I looked around, I said, okay, of all of these people, if we continue the direction we're going, where are we going to be 5-10 years from now? And the reality that hit me, I didn't like that reality. And so I go, okay, what do I need to do to change that? And part of it for me was changing the people that I spent time with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I didn't like the people I was hanging out with. It had nothing to do with them. It was just the conscious choice of where I wanted to go. And when you look at a community or the ability to surround yourself with like-minded people, it's been scientifically proven that is the easiest way to do behavioral change. The analogy that's commonly used, and this was studied, if I decide I start hanging out with 4 guys who run all the time. That's just what they do. They're runners, right? Guess what I'm going to start doing? I'm probably going to start running.
Absolutely.
If I hang out with 5 guys that just want to drink beer and watch football, guess what I'm going to be doing? Drinking beer and watching football on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so you want to find yourself with people. For me, at least, I want to surround myself with guys who cherish their families, want to be good fathers. That's a big one for me, is the father thing. And also want growth.
Yeah.
Right. And I like talking about business. So that's also a fun thing to surround myself with.
Yeah. I'm very similar. I want to be inspired, right? And the guys that are willing to do the change, and even the guys on the calls that are maybe new to this, that fire they have to get on that call with me because they want it, that gives me inspiration, right? The time I get to come out and hang out with you, I get inspired because you're teaching me something I don't know, right? And so it's the most important thing is who we surround ourselves with.
It is,
right?
Yeah. That's why selfishly, I like the TPM community. And again, anybody that's listening to this podcast, we deliberately market and talk to people that we like, people that we want to hang out with. Action takers, if you would. And if you're going back to the original thought that we were talking about over coffee, this idea that, hey, I know you're talking to guys and I talk to guys that say, hey, I don't have the time, I don't have the money. And there's 2 things that I often do when I do individual coaching. I talk about a lot in this podcast because I do it a lot. So if we were coaching and you used any of those things, you're like, Doug, I just don't have the time. I would say, pull up your calendar. Show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you said, hey, Doug, I just don't have the money to make the investment in whatever it is you say that you want. Now, it's not stuff you don't want, but if you're telling me you want to fix something, you want to save your marriage, you want to, travel, whatever it is, pull up your bank account. Let's see where you're spending your money, because your dollar is a vote, right? I look at every dollar spent as a vote. What are you voting for? Are you voting for a healthy lifestyle? Are you voting for a healthy marriage? Are you voting for your dreams and aspirations? Or are you buying the golf clubs you don't use? Are you buying the exercise bike that is now a coat rack?
Yeah, I love that. I'm so using that. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
think about it. Like, if you just pull it up, and most people don't look at their finances. I don't like looking at mine either. That's why I have somebody that helped me out. And when I sit down with my wife and I look at our finances, like, hey, where are we consciously spending our money? What are we doing? Like, you're buying all these clothes. Is that what you want? And when we look at it, my wife's like, no, actually, I want to go on vacation. I want to travel as a family. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's return all these and let's plan the vacation. It doesn't have to be lavish. We go camping. We can do something. But again, I'm looking at the calendar and the bank account to look at where are those priorities actually focused. And does Doug 20 years from now agree with that focus?
Yeah. Yeah. It's your return on your investment. That piece that Jackie you bought is not going to last, but those memories of that vacation with your kids,
yeah, it's huge, man.
Yeah.
And you also got to look at from the perspective, like you said, of the ROI, if you would. For a lot of the guys, it's like, are you not spending time at your kid's basketball game? Are you not going to the school lunch when you can bring a parent, taking that time off work to the best of your ability to get there and be at that actual event to make it something magical. Because the stuffed animals and the gifts, the scooters, the kids are going to forget about them next year, but they won't forget about that event.
Yeah, that's all the time around our house at Christmas. We have a pretty big family, and the kids always get so much. And what I realize is that, which is we're so fortunate for them to be loved and have that. But you recognize pretty quickly that they're only interested in a couple things, right?
Yeah.
And the other things really don't get much attention because there's just too much, right? And so it's the same in a kid's world it is in our world.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, my son comes to me and goes, I'm bored. I go, cool, I'm going to give away all your toys then. I'm like, obviously I want to play with them, then it's, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
He knows somewhat that I'm kidding. I think. At least I think he does. But it's the idea of like where are we investing? Where are we spending our time, and where are our thoughts going?
Yep.
A lot of the guys listening to what we're talking about, they're in a relationship that's probably not working as well as they want to, and it doesn't have to be in the gutter, so to speak. You want to get to a place where you deserve more than average.
Yeah.
Right. I think all of us do. We deserve greatness. You got one shot at this game we call life. Where are you investing your resources? You can always get back money. But you can't get back time. That's proven. We all know it.
Yeah.
But very few of us live like that.
Yeah.
And if your relationships are crumbling, man, your time is running out fast.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. When we do the rocking chair test, Chris, it's that whole idea of, when you're in your 80s and you're on the porch having a whiskey or a lemonade or iced tea or whatever you're doing, and you're reflecting on your life, what is it you're most proud of? And 10 times out of 10, the guys say, my family.
Yeah.
But how often are men, because we're not taught this, are we investing in learning how to relate in our relationships?
Yeah, we're not. That's the thing. And we still have this idea of just I need to provide, I need to protect, right?
Hey guys, I wanted to interrupt this episode because it's dawned on me that many of you guys aren't aware that we actually have a book on how to save your marriage without talking about it. Now, thousands of men have read it, they've reviewed it, and I want to give you the opportunity to do the same. If you're interested in grabbing it, it's a short read, but it's helped a lot of men just like you. And maybe you're not interested in the activation method yet, but this is a small entry point that can really turn things around for you. Go over on Amazon. We have it priced as cheap as Amazon will let us. And that way you have a resource that you can use right now to start getting some results in your marriage. Now let's get back to the episode.
But what about that emotional support that none of us really know generally how to do that?
I love that. I had a conversation with Coach Andy Torr in this very same room. And I think if you guys go back and listen to it, I think it was called something about understanding your assignment, or you missed the assignment. Andy has a really good analogy to this. The provider protector, that's the base, right? Like that's not the gold star. Like you get a gold star, you did that.
Yeah.
But what I missed, and I think most men miss, is that protect isn't physical.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but it's the emotional protection.
Yep.
And I didn't get that, man.
Yeah.
I remember my wife saying, I don't feel safe. And at this time, I was in Santa Barbara. I was playing soccer competitively. I was doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I felt I was a very safe guy to be around. I'm not a violent guy, like towards her or anything else. Never put a hand on her. And so I'm like, what the F do you mean you don't feel safe? And then that's when I started to learn and get this whole idea of emotional safety that as men, we don't talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I missed it so hard until I found you guys and went through the program. It was like my 101 on emotional intelligence and like what it meant. And I always thought I just had to do those two things. And same story. She didn't feel comfortable. She was not fulfilled,
Yeah. It reminds me, man, yesterday, I was guilty, past time. Sometimes I'll watch social media clips, and it was an SNL clip. And I'm going to butcher this clip, and it's going to get me canceled now. It's the guy on SNL who's openly gay, and he's talking about his girlfriends. Like, I love hanging out with the girls, and then these women were talking, but there's so much drama, so that's what we started with, get a straight friend, And in that scene, it's the football player that's in that scene. he's sitting there, he goes, oh man, my dad died. Oh, I'm sorry for talking about it. Like he's apologizing. Like this guy's talking about how men communicate, straight men communicate, and the differences, and wow, gay men need to hang out with some straight men so they don't have to deal with the drama. And obviously it's an SNL skit, and I'm butchering it, but you can go look it up, guys. But in that, what they're trying to talk about is how little us guys communicate about what's going on in our real world. We don't go out and talk to a bunch of guys unless we have the opportunity to do so, or in that safe environment.
Yeah, a lot of these calls I'm jumping on to, these guys are pretty closed off in the beginning because you can tell they just haven't had the opportunity to talk to another person, especially a stranger.
Yeah.
And so it takes them a while to build that trust to let them do that. But when they do, it's crazy. Like they're holding so much in that they just need to let that out. And from the start of the calls, you have this guy who's really closed off. You can feel the heaviness on them. And by the end of the call, regardless of what direction we go, you can feel the light and the hope that just because they've released what they've been probably hanging on to and wanting to express, that they can express to their wives. And or they've tried and it doesn't come across right. There's just too much mud on the glass.
Absolutely. And for you guys listening or watching us on YouTube that aren't aware of this, for the last 8 years, TPM, we've only worked with business owners and C-suite executives. C-suite executives was only last year that we opened the door up to those guys. And recently we opened up a program we're calling TPM Navigate for non-business owners. And Chris is the one heading that program up for us. And Chris, you're getting on the calls with a lot of these men. Yeah. I mean, your calendar's booked solid. As soon as you open your calendar up, guys are flooding in to have the opportunity to talk and get into the program. One of the things we were talking about over coffee transparently was the fact that a lot of these guys are saying, hey, I don't know if I can afford to invest in saving my marriage or fixing the things that are wrong, but we know they have the wave runner, the ATV, the motorcycle, the golf clubs. And it's just that whole mental switch that all guys, business owners and non-business owners, get into of where am I investing my money? Yeah. And where am I investing my time is the one I added in there. Because those are the two biggest excuses we make about everything. Yeah. Yeah. The guys that at the end of the calls are like, you know what? It's going to be a lot less expensive than my divorce will be. And I was like, I can promise you that. That's a guarantee. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the guys I work with one-on-one, some of them, they're high net worth individuals. It's over 6 figures to work with me one-on-one. And I don't say that to impress you. I say it to impress upon the people of like, that's one guy I was talking to was like, dude, if I get divorced, this is going to be expensive. But also they're a smart dude. Yeah. He goes, the money's one thing. He's like, but also the emotional toll it's going to take on me and my business. Like I'm not going to be able to focus on the business. And he's like, honestly, I want to stay married if I can. So I'd like to work on it. But that's the mentality a guy needs. You got to say, hey, I'm going to go all in until I can't go anymore. In fact, not all marriages work out. It's just the way it is. But the idea of going all in and doing your best until you get to that breaking point, or you don't have the decision to make that breaking point, right? She does. Yeah, that was me. I mean, in 2020 when I found you guys, I was at that breaking point, and I just when I talked to you guys, I was like, I'm going to commit to giving everything I have to the last part, and like. Just so you can walk away knowing you gave it all. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And like that's worth it to do that and invest that, because you can agree anytime there's that kind of disruption in your personal life, how are you working on anything else in your life? It takes over everything. You're not going to be successful at work. You're not going to be successful as a parent. Like it clouds everything. And so it's really important to put that priority towards that. Yeah. And I love when the guys come on and they're not in that desperation. They're like, they recognize it's not going right, and they're being proactive on that. And those guys have the best chance to getting where they want because they didn't wait too long. Yeah. Well, what a lot of guys forget is over 70% of divorce. So it's over 50% in America. I'm not sure what it is in the UK or Canada, but I'm going to guess it's pretty similar. Over 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Nobody goes on their wedding day going, yeah, I'm probably going to be that 50, right? Everybody's like, I don't know why they did, but we got this, right? Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you got 50% of marriages ending in divorce. Yeah. Of those 50, over 70% are initiated by the woman. And that's a lot of time. And it goes up to over 90 if she's got a college degree or higher. 9 out of 10 times the woman is the one that does it. And it's because, in my opinion, a lot of times guys are like, well, it's not bad. I mean, it's not good, but we have ups and downs, but it's not horrible. Meanwhile, she's going, okay, like she's dropping hints after hints after hints. And then, before they know it, it's too late. She's like, hey, here's the lawyer's papers.
Yeah. Then some of the questions I asked the guys, I kind of to understand what kind of questions they're being asked.
Yeah.
And a lot of times as guys, we aren't computing what's actually being said to us, right? We're not like, they're telling us sometimes it's incredibly direct, right? And we just like to pretend like, put that right under the rug.
Totally. Sweep it under.
With all the other ones I put there.
Yep, exactly. Hopium is what I call it.
Hopium's good.
Surviving off hopium.
Yeah.
I hope tomorrow will be better.
Yeah.
I hope in a month this will pass and she won't be as bitchy as nagging or what have you. Or what I did, right? Total Mr. Nice Guy. Okay, she's not happy. All right. She wants me to clean house. I'll show her flip a clean house, crank up the music, scrub the house, get it all ready. My wife comes home and she's like, oh, you didn't do the oven? I was like, oh, I just lost it.
Yeah.
I hit my breaking point. I was like, I can't, So, and that's what I did, Chris, is I would go, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to show her how amazing of a guy I am. Everybody else seems to think it, right? So here we go. Yep. And I go all in, not realizing what she was talking about was this emotional safety, the emotional connection. And then when I felt I was doing so much, then I hit resentment and then I'd snap.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever get physical or anything, but I would just get angry and I'd be like, this is BS. You don't understand it.
Yeah,
What's your problem?
I was telling you that this morning. I've done that in my relationship. You know? Yeah.
It's a common pattern. Dr. Glover's got that book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And to me, that book, for me at least, and I've read it a few times, or I've listened to the audio version of it a few times, it just codifies where guys are like, oh, that's me, right? And what happens in that scenario, I know we're going off topic here, is we flip the dynamic in the relationship, right? So when we're being the guy who, for me, when I was being the guy to clean the house and make my wife happy, I was telling her, I need your external validation. And what she was receiving was, I'm no longer safe, right? Because if I'm relying on her validation, then how am I going to protect her from anybody else in the outside world? Because if she can crush me, then, the people she's scared of, I can't crush them.
Yeah, it's like you're speaking two different languages, or you're trying to make deposits with the wrong currency at the wrong bank.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, I use the languages a lot, but I like that currency analogy. If you're trying to take British pounds to a U.S. bank or vice versa, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, I know the guys you're getting on calls with and the guys I talk to, is this whole idea of investing, right? And what are you investing in? When you look at what I would encourage the guys coming out of this call or this talk is when you're looking at your future, let's fast forward 10 years. What is it you hoped you would have invested in? Do you hope you would have invested in your learning and growth for your business? Do you hope you would have invested in that set of golf clubs? Do you hope you would have invested in learning how to relate to the opposite sex? So women more, because we are different species, really. Or do you wish you would have bought the boat, right? Like, where are you 10 years from now of like, this is the most important thing to me? And I'll let every man make their own decision. There's no judgment. If you want the boat, get the boat. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a boat. I love boats. But, at the same time, for me, when I'm looking at where I'm going to travel, where I'm going to go, I look at where's that investment for Doug 10 years from now as a father, a husband, and a businessman. Like, where am I going to get the most growth for myself?
Yeah. Yeah, I do then a 5 year. It's kind of, you're kind of projecting what you want to be in those 5 years and what it looks like. And just always making sure everything is lining to where you plan to go, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way, I guess. I'm 47. So if I could go back in time to my 37-year-old self, would I tell him to do a couple things differently? You darn betcha. Right?
Yep.
So what does 57-year-old Doug know in retrospect that I should be doing now?
Yeah.
And so I start thinking, when I think like that, I kind of have a checklist of like, I got to stop that thing. Got to start doing that. Start looking at longevity versus just physical fitness, and start tweaking those things. And I think for a lot of men listening here, their self would invest in their own personal growth, especially in the area of relationships.
Yeah. I think the marriage rate will just how much work needs to be done in that area, right? The
Absolutely. Well, man, thanks for coming again, and thanks for taking on this for TPM Navigate to help these guys. Clearly, we haven't marketed or said anything, and your calendar's just jam packed. So thanks for taking the time to help these men.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the program, and it seems to be growing really quickly. And so, we're going to be able to help a lot of guys, a lot of marriages, and a lot of families.
Yeah, and what we say, our mission here is to save children by saving their fathers first. Mm-hmm. Awesome job.
All right.
Gentlemen, as I always say in the moment of insight, take massive action. And I think here's a really big point. When you look 10 years ahead, for me, 57, right? I'm at 47 now. What does my 57-year-old version want me to be investing in now? In terms of education, in terms of growth, in terms of finances, like where do I put my dollars? Where do I put my time and my resources? What is that for me? And I want you to answer that for yourself. What is it? What are the most important things when you're in retrospect? And again, I've been doing this for a long, long time, several decades now. And so with that, I've had the opportunity of talking to thousands of men just like you. And I can tell you relationships is a huge one. And it's not only the relationships with other people, but also the relationship with yourself. And that was a hard one for me to really get over time, but I started to understand it more and more. When we fill our cups up, we can actually help out other people too. But that starts with taking action for yourself, and you got to do it. If not now, when? When's the time for you? Look at your calendar and look and find that time for you. So like I said, show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities. Show me your bank account, and I'll show you your priorities as well. Gentlemen, take massive action. We'll see you next time on the TPM Show.